بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Welcome to episode 55 of the series The Authentic Statements of the Companions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In this episode we'll take the statement of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud in which he said الخلاف شر, differing is evil. Differing is evil. Now the context behind this statement of Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu is that Uthman radiallahu anhu prayed in Mina 4 rak'ahs, meaning he prayed the full prayer. Even though he was a traveler, he prayed the full complete prayer. He prayed 4 rak'ahs rather than shortening the prayer into 2 rak'ahs. So Uthman radiallahu anhu prayed in Mina 4 rak'ahs. He completed the prayer. And so Abdullah Mas'ud said, objecting or disagreeing with him, he said, I prayed with the Prophet ﷺ 2 rak'ahs, and I prayed with Abu Bakr 2 rak'ahs, and I prayed with Umar 2 rak'ahs, and I prayed with Uthman for the first part of his Imara, of his rulership or his Khilafah, 2 rak'ahs. In other words, he's mentioning that they always shortened prayer. When they were traveling, they prayed Salah 2 rak'ahs. As we know, Dhuhr, Asr and Isha gets shortened from 4 to 2 rak'ahs. As for Fajr and Maghrib, they stay the same length. Allah Mas'ud radiallahu anhu is saying, I prayed with the Prophet ﷺ and with Abu Bakr and with Umar and with Uthman during the first part of his Khilafah, 2 rak'ahs. Then he completed it, meaning then later on in his Khilafah, Uthman radiallahu anhu, that year he prayed 4 rak'ahs. He completed the Salah. Ibn Mas'ud continued to say, then the paths dispersed amongst you, meaning some people started differing. Some people prayed 2, some people prayed 4. And then he said, I wish out of the 4 rak'ahs I have 2 that are accepted. I have 2 rak'ahs that are accepted by Allah. Out of the 4, instead of praying the 4, I wish I have 2 rak'ahs that are accepted by Allah. That would have been sufficient, in other words. Then later on, Ibn Mas'ud prayed 4 rak'ahs. So some people told him, you criticized Uthman for praying 4 rak'ahs, and then you prayed 4? You criticized Uthman, then now we're praying 4 behind him? So he responded with the statement, Al-Khilafu Shar, differing is evil. Differing is evil. Again, we understand the context behind it, and we see how the companions differed in some cases. And we see how differing isn't something good in of itself. It's not something good. But we also see when the companions anhum differed in certain instances on small things like that, how they dealt with those differences. And we mentioned this statement in another episode 15 of the series Filtering Out What the Prophet ﷺ Never Said, when someone asked about the authenticity of the hadith, differing in my nation is a mercy. And we pointed out that this hadith was a fabricated hadith. So if you want more on that specific aspect of differing and dealing with differences of opinion, and that specific fabricated hadith, differing in my nation is a mercy, and pointing out, showing that differing is not a mercy, as we see from this authentic statement of Ibn Mas'ud that differing is evil, it's something bad. And we also see how he dealt with it, how the companions dealt with it when it did happen amongst them, when they did differ. But for more information, do refer to episode 15 of that series, Filtering Out What the Prophet ﷺ Never Said. So this is the context behind Ibn Mas'ud's statement. Now let me give you the context behind why Uthman prayed 4 rak'ahs that year in Mina, even though he was traveling, rather than praying 2 rak'ahs, which is the sunnah of shortening the salah when someone's traveling. And Uthman wasn't just opposing the sunnah, as according to Ibn Mas'ud himself, as he said, he prayed part of Uthman's Khilafah with Uthman when he shortened the prayer as well. So Uthman, another authentic narration tells us why Uthman prayed the full prayer, completed the prayer 4 rak'ahs rather than shortening it in Mina, even though he was traveling. So Uthman completed prayer in Mina because, this authentic narration explains, because the Bedouins this year were a lot in Hajj. The Bedouins who came for Hajj this year were a lot. And so he prayed 4 rak'ahs to teach the people that prayer is 4 rak'ahs. That these prayers, this is how long each prayer is. Because, he was thinking if he shortens the prayer, and a lot of these new people, Bedouins coming from remote regions, different remote parts of the Arabian Peninsula, coming to Hajj, they pray behind him and he shortens prayer into 2 rak'ahs, they might think that prayer is only 2 rak'ahs, and when they go back home and they're not traveling, they're not in a state of traveling, they end up praying 2 rak'ahs because there's no of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ around in the remote areas where they're living, so they might not have much knowledge or access to the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. So he was worried that they might not learn the proper way of salah, how many rak'ahs salah is. When they go back to their homes, the Bedouins, when they go back to their homes and they don't know any better, they might think that he prayed 2 rak'ahs, salah must be 2 rak'ahs, and they'll just pray 2 rak'ahs even when they're resident, even when they're back home, even if they're not traveling. So that's why he completed the salah, he prayed it 4 rak'ahs in order to, again, it's an ijtihad from him, because he saw some purpose or some benefit behind completing prayer rather than shortening it, even though he was traveling. So this is the context behind it. This is the context behind why he completed the prayer, even though during the first part of his Khilafah, he would shorten the prayer when he would be traveling to Hajj. Now, the last point that we'd mention is it's very important when we differ on anything. It's important that we agree on one principle, which is that it's important whenever we differ to take everything we differ upon back to the Quran and the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, the way the Prophet ﷺ and his companions anhum understood and practiced the teachings of the deen. We take it back to the Quran and Sunnah and we unite upon the truth. We unite upon the truth. And as we can see, even though Ibn Mas'ud disagreed with Uthman, may Allah please with both of them, with all the companions, and he pointed that al-khilaf shar, differing is evil, it's something bad, it's not something good in of itself, it's not good. We should always try when we differ on anything to take it back to the Quran and authentic Sunnah and try to unite upon the truth. But we also see how he still prayed behind him, how he didn't cause that disagreement to go out of control and to turn into a bigger deal, to spiral out of that minor disagreement into a much bigger problem, which causes the Muslims to split and start going into sects just based on disagreement. So this shows us some of the wisdom of dealing with differences when they do happen. At the same time, that differing in of itself is not something good, and we should always try to go back to the Quran and the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Barakallahu feekum, jazakumullahu khairan, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.